this with people in your environment. This is something B.F. Skinner pointed out when he was training animals. He said, you can use threat and punishment to train animals. But he said the most effective mode of training isn't that at all. You use sustained attention and reward. And so imagine that you're training a rat to climb up a ladder, rung by rung, and then do a little dance on the top and then climb down the other side. So what Skinner would do, his animals were hungry, by the way. They were starved to 75% of their body weight. So they were pretty dopaminergically motivated by the provision of any food. He would watch them wander around in the cage where a ladder was, let's say, a little rat monkey bar apparatus. And then when the rat would get near the ladder, he'd give it a food pellet. And so then it was soon spending a lot of time near the ladder. And now and then, while it was monkeying about, it would put one paw on the first rung. It was like food pellet. And then it would soon be doing that. And then sooner or later, it would put the next paw on and he'd reward it. And so Skinner trained pigeons to pilot guided missiles by pecking on photos in relationship to the ground they were watching. Right, so
spectacular.
He could use reward in an unbelievable. So one of the things you can do in your local environment and with yourself as well is you can watch people around you and you can see when they make small steps towards manifesting some behaviors you'd like to see a lot more of. And then you can tell them in this very differentiated, discriminatory manner, you can say, hey, look, here's the sequence of actions you just undertook. I saw that. I noted the process, and here's the delightful outcome. Good work.
What's critical, again, is this cognitive appraisal, this interpretation of that. If you think of that anxiety as a natural system of getting you to move, of just biasing your body toward movement, toward action, as opposed to inaction, because that's what anxiety really is. It's a bias toward action. Then you can literally reshape the whole notion of what it feels like to have elevated heart rate, maybe trembling hands, maybe flushing of the face when one is doing public speaking. Times you get pretty comfortable. Now, there are situations in life, I should just mention, such as sleep deprivation or in particular, that tend to make this whole set of systems with prefrontal cortex and limbic stuff and ACC and insula kind of dysregulated. It makes it harder to manage. That goes without saying, right? The quickest way to peel somebody apart is to sleep deprive them for 2 or 3 nights. One night, you're probably fine.
Right.
So, all the basics of self-care, of good nutrition, social connection, sleep, exercise, sunlight, those still apply. I mentioned that. I want to make sure I answer your question about gene expression and permanent changes because I've failed to do that thus far. One of the things that is absolutely key about the dopamine system is that it has a fast component. Dopamine is released, more adrenaline, aka epinephrine, can be released, and you can, this sort of upward spiral of energy and sort of success with the occasional drops, right? I mean, nobody succeeds in every task, right? Sometimes the phone rings or the doorbell rings and you fail. Goodness, you fail to clean the cup. You come home like, are you going to crash into a puddle of tears? No, you just clean it then and then put it away, right? Of course. But there's a slow system associated with achieving wins, even small wins. And that slow system is in the form of hormonal control that then translates to gene control. So 2 hormones in particular, testosterone and estrogen, which are present in both men and women, males and females, of course, but to varying degrees, are both secreted when the dopamine system is activated. This has to do with the relationship between dopaminergic neurons and the pituitary gland, which releases gonadotropins and luteinizing hormones, which then stimulate the testes and the ovaries, et cetera, to release the so-called sex steroid hormones.
Learning in the way that you described. Okay, so back to the gene regulation. It increases testosterone, the wins.
Yeah, so testosterones are associated wins. Winners tend to be able to win more? There's some, et cetera. But, if we want to bring this into the common world, a few years back when I started doing some public-facing education, I started getting a lot of questions, especially on YouTube, from young males about pornography and masturbation. And this becomes very relevant here. We have to remember that this dopaminergic system is generalizable to many different behaviors, right? Academic pursuits, sports pursuits, relationship pursuits. But fundamentally, it was, again, I wasn't consulted at the design phase, but fundamentally it's tacked into the adaptive survival behaviors. And every species, including ours, has at least 2 major motivations, which is to protect its young and to make more of itself, to make more young at some level. People can opt out of that. But one of the absolutely pathologic situations for any animal or human is to be able to access repeated dopamine surges without effort or any pursuit that's self-directed or that's directed, I should say. So for instance, cocaine, a drug which potently increases dopamine, or methamphetamine, which potently increases methamphetamine, but doesn't require any sort of adaptive action pursuit except to acquire the drug and spend money on it.
No sacrifice.
No sacrifice. So essentially what ends up happening is the circuit that gets rewarded is only the drug-seeking behavior, and no other behavior will give the kind of potent dopamine release that cocaine or methamphetamine will, which is why they are so pernicious.